Okay, good
Okay.
morning and hi, LinkedIn. Happy Tuesday. I'm Rachel, your host for this LinkedIn Live. It's called Smart Impressions, where we are helping people drive human connections to drive revenue. And I like to bring my community on for the ride. Today, I have a very special guest, Michelle Shari, the CEO and founder of Optima Consulting. I'll let her tell you a little bit more about her, but we're going to dive into a really interesting session. Each week we go live, we talk a good 15 minutes, give you a little hint of some great stuff. And in this ever-changing business landscape, communication and human communications is key. And so, unfortunately, when it comes to this communication, there seems a number of businesses that are lacking these skills internally to drive this communications to really help them with their profitability. And Michelle's going to take us on that journey. So, welcome to the show, Michelle. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Rachel. Thank you.
How you doing today, okay? And it looks like we got a little frozen. That's always interesting if she's going to come back here. Michelle, are you there? Going great, guys. Here you are. You're coming back now. You are a little choppy. How's that Wi-Fi where you are? I know Dubai and do has been a challenge these days, but there you are. We can see you again. You went out for a minute. That's okay. We'll get right to it. So I want to just say good morning, Janad. Thanks for joining. I want to invite anyone that's listening with us today to jump into some questions. And before you let your questions go to Michelle, I'm going to start with mine. How does that sound? Okay. So Michelle, listen, I know you're helping businesses left, right, and center about the biggest challenge in businesses today. Communication between the management and the employees, right?
Yes,
Is it possible? Can they overcome this?
Yes, of course. I mean, lots of companies there already. I mean, it's a very critical key area, right? And one of the big things that people within management kind of forget about is to make sure that the communication is flowing out to the actual company or the employees. And especially when there are major changes happening, this information is not going out to the employees. And transparency is the key, really. Making sure that there's open communication channels, that the employees knows what's happening, how the transitions are occurring and why they are occurring. That's the main issue, really. Once they know that communication channels are open, it's much easier to manage changes and such.
Communication, Janad agrees. He said exactly. Communication's a major game. So he says we're able to retain more clients and team with better communication. Doesn't it feel good to communicate? I mean, for me, I love communicating. This is my mission in life, to help people communicate better, because most of this aggravation, frustration, all this negative stuff comes from not knowing, not listening. And it goes both ways, right? It's hearing the customer, and in this case, the employees, and hearing the staff and understanding everyone's different needs, right?
Yeah, the organization needs to create an environment, a culture where it's okay to also ask within management, and the feedback has to flow both ways, sort of. So once that's a possibility and employees feel that they can ask the questions directly and they're actually getting responses, it's going to open a whole, the culture changes and communication improves. Yeah.
So great point, because, a lot of management, I'm sure they probably come to you and they're like, well, I want my voice to be heard. I want my opinion, my decisions to be heard from the team, but they're lacking listening, right? To understanding what the needs of the staff are, right? So how can management really improve this communication? You suggest a two-way street, but what is it? Is it, a round table where people talk? I mean, a lot of times individuals don't want their voice to be recognized as a I'm Rachel and hear me roar, right? Because
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
subjective to feeling, maybe any kind of discrimination or whatever. Maybe they feel like their job's on the line and they don't feel like they have the open voice in such an environment. What do you recommend?
There's so many ways of doing it. Specifically coming from I'm Danish, so Scandinavian mentality. I have seen it work really effectively, and that's one of the things. I mean, there are so many different steps, but one of the big things that caught my eye was where there's, for example, lunch with the CEO every once a week on a Friday, perhaps, or once a month. You can organize like one employee gets to sit down 20 minutes with the CEO, talk, ask questions, tell them how their work is being affected by various conditions and so on. And that means that there's a direct line from the employee to the senior top level management where they can see how the work is being affected and what the conditions are and how they can maybe help alleviate that. And that's coming directly from the horse's mouth, right? So you have also some feedback from the employees of how that can be improved. There's also other ways you can do surveys. I might be jumping around in the questions here, but one of the critical elements I would say is making sure that you're monitoring, tracking, and processing exit interviews, so you can see what the turnover rate is. Why is there a turnover rate? Make sure you're asking the questions to the employees as to what are the elements that have affected their decisions to leave the company. And that set of data is very critical to also analyzing what the conditions are that needs to be changed and how they can be changed.
Fantastic. You see, Janad is engaged in this conversation. So I love this. Thank you so much for jumping on the conversation. What do you think about his suggestion? And they onboarded client success managers just to communicate team with the clients, which is interesting because that's the outbound relationships, right?
It's a perfect way of doing it. And there's very direct lines that's helping the onboarding process. So yeah, I think that's a great way of doing it.
So I love, the idea that getting feedback when someone leaves, so
Yes.
you can implement some changes. Great start. But don't you think it's too late? Like if someone's leaving your organization, you're getting this information too late, as far as I'm concerned, because the most expensive cost to any organization is staff turnover. So if you have a high staff turnover rate, you better fix your processes. You better start your communication channels. And really, Michelle, I'm sure you're in dire need in this town of people just saying, why are people leaving? Because it is so costly.
But sometimes when they come to me, we're already at that stage where it's happening, right? And it's important to know why it's happening before you can do something about fixing it. But yes, you're correct. All the initial levels that go before that are more important, of course. And besides having open transparency in the organization, communication lines, communicating changes and why the changes are happening, training sessions as well, which can also help alleviate some of the questions for some of the employees, depending on where they are in the organization, but also feedback forms. I know that could be a little bit, depends on how big the organization is, how controversial it can be, and also the culture of the organization. But anonymous feedback forms can help you take the temperature of the organization, especially in large corporations. It's important to do on a regular basis to make sure that you are online or on target and in line with where you want to be going with the organizational culture. And so feedback forms, open sessions, allowing a culture where also employees can ask openly and get the feedback, like I said before. Those are some of the main
Fantastic.
areas. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, when we talk about human connections, it's just as important internally of an organization as it is
Mhm.
externally, right? Because you want
Yes.
to keep both kind of customers happy. And I know a lot of people tend to overlook this because it's about let's go get our customers outside. But if your
Yeah.
customers are not, if your employees are not happy, guess what? They're not going to produce, right?
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not going to be able to innovate, and they might
Exactly.
even not even care, right? There's no connectivity with your brand to really have like represent your brand on the outside to these customers, and actually sales can actually suffer quite significantly,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. One of the things I would say is that the management needs to make sure that they're visible in the organization. So they need to be in the organization, show their presence, be at the different main meetings, sessions, um, different morning. When I used to be, when I was in MasterCard, there was all these, every month there was a big morning session where there'd be some sort of workshop within the different teams or from the different teams. And just the fact that different levels of management would be present there also showed the commitment that they are willing to hear what's happening, what's going on in the organization, especially when the company is that big. You need to be present, and you need to show that you're open to have the conversation if anybody needs to. That makes a big difference. Also, what was I going to say? Yeah, I think I lost my train of thought, but presence is one of the main critical elements, where people will feel a form of trust because they can also see that you're there, you're actively engaging, and take a interest in your staff, in your employee. Get to know them. Of course, again, it depends on how large the organization is or the company is. If it's small, it's rather easy. Make sure that you have some sort of connection with the person. Doesn't have to be on a very deep level, but knowing a little bit about their lives and what they do outside of the company, that would also help to build some trust and connectivity, so the employees feel that they can actually go and speak to you in case there's any issues.
Great. So, I think, especially in the Middle East, I must say, coming from America, there is a very huge discrepancy of this hierarchy that exists in the workplace, right?
Mm,
Like, I'm just going to call it what it is,
yeah.
okay? Because I'm a blunt New Yorker, and it just basically, like, just call it out. Like, a lot of people go, why do I want to know about my staff who maybe be a admin level when I'm a CEO level, right? How are you going
Yeah.
to bridge that gap? So what do you recommend in that kind of situation? Because we're talking, people listening might say, you know what, I'm on this level. I shouldn't have to be engaging with these guys, So what do you
Yeah.
recommend?
Well, it's like, well, it's a part of, for example, on-floor management, right? So management shows themselves on the floor of operations. That could be anywhere in the different teams. And I think it's important, like I said before, that they show that they're there, because even if they're working on a strategic level, they still need to know what's happening on the ground floor, right? I don't want to call it ground floor, but on operational level, on the different
Level
team
three.
levels. And it's the only way that you can also tell, is everything going the way that you want the organization to go? Is the culture you want to portray? And you need to be there to kind of make that happen. I I I believe so.
Well, we're going to
We
go
have.
right into with our 20 seconds. Sorry to interrupt. Our 20 seconds left. We keep it short and snippy. We can go all day
Yeah.
with this topic. There's no doubt. You are full of valuable information about this. So I really appreciate you being here. I want to go right into these tips that if you are listening and you have problem with staff turnover, communication, maybe people not even giving you what you need as an organization, what are 3 things you can implement today after this session that makes a difference in your professional environment tomorrow? What do you think? Michelle, can we say be present as number one?
Be present, be transparent, and offer information throughout the organization. Even if it's a main thing in one part of the company, the rest might also need to know what's happening, and it will alleviate some anxiety and so on. Number two, visibility. Did we say visibility? And build relationships with your employees. Build connections. Connection builds trust.
Yeah.
Right? And three, measure what's happening. Feedback forms, focus groups. I don't think I mentioned focus groups before, but that's a big possibility as well. And of course, exit interviews and turnover rates. Make sure it's all recorded and analyze that information.
Perfect. And, I'm going to add one more as an extra to follow up on that, because you can get this information, but if you don't do anything with this information, then what are you doing?
Exactly. You have to analyze it.
You better figure out, analyze, but not only that, strategize what's the fix to fix the problem, right? And that's kind of where Michelle can help. Michelle Sherry, thank you so much for joining us today on Smart Impressions. This is where people are making the best impression in the business life, whether it be to your customers or internally to your customers that work for your organization. We're sponsored by Dripify, which is one of the best automation platforms on LinkedIn today to reach more people so you don't have to do it. So reach out to me if you have some questions. We love that you're here, and thank you so much for being and joining. Thanks for your discussions and questions. And we'll see you next Tuesday for another 15 minutes of knowledge from my community. Thank you, Michelle. Have a great day.
Thank you, Rachel. You too. Bye.
Bye.